Today's guest is an ordained interfaith minister from the US and a long-time UFO contactee. He's authored several books including Alien Scriptures, Extraterrestrials in the Holy Bible. He's also appeared on many paranormal shows such as Coast to Coast AM and Ancient Aliens. Please give a massive Koit welcome to Reverend Michael JS Carter. Hi Michael, and welcome to KoitCast.
Good to be here. Thank you for having me.
No, it was lush having you here. I really appreciate your time. So thank you for giving up your time to be here on my show.
It's my pleasure.
Excellent stuff. Let's start with the old classic. Who are you? Where you're from? All that good stuff.
Well, I'm from Baltimore, Maryland originally. And I moved to New York City. I lived there for about 30 years, 27 in Manhattan, about 2.5 in Brooklyn. And moved down south. I now live in the American Southeast. I live in the state of North Carolina, here in the Appalachian Mountains, and I wear many hats. I mean, I'm a clergy person. I'm a father. I'm a husband. I feel like I'm doing some good in my life's work, and so I'm a contented human being, if that contributes to who I am. I'm a contented person, which the more people that are content, I think the better off we'll be. So those are some of the hats that I wear.
That's amazing. And you're the first person I've spoken to who's actually come out and volunteered straight away that you are a contented person.
Yeah.
Actually, it's one of my things. I always ask people, do you think you're on the right path in life? You clearly are and have been for a while.
Yes. And I've been blessed with that because a lot of the counseling that I do, there are people, still trying to say, well, what is it that I want to do? Especially people who, like, I'll be 67 in July. I haven't retired yet. I'm going to try and hang in until I'm 70. So I'm just using this as an example. Mm-hmm. But there are many people who, what's my identity now? The empty nest, the kids have left. I'm retired now, so I'm not wedded to the job. So who am I? And this is the time to really find that out because life goes by quickly. I mean, if I live to be 90, that's almost 30, maybe 30 years from now. If I'm going to do it, I need to do it now. So this is the time. Time.
Fair play to you. Now that goes on to something I read in your bio where you said you were initially an actor, or you trained to be an actor, or you worked in that profession. Yes, what's the story of that?
Well, okay, I'll give the truncated version. Okay. I was living in Baltimore. I graduated from high school in 1975. I was still fondling around, what am I going to do? So in 78, I went to Towson State College in Maryland. I had a theater. Someone said you should audition for this show. So I kind of got bitten by the theater bug. I auditioned for this show. I got it. And then I started doing a lot of community theater. And basically what happened is it's the old story of I was an understudy for a show called The Amorous Flea, based on Moliere's School for Wives. The guy who was doing it, the lead, was hurt. No, he got sick. I went in. They gave me a standing ovation. The old ego said, this is what I need to do. Yeah. And so I moved to New York. And I went there and I get a pension. It's a small pension, but I get a pension. I was a professional actor. But I always loved church, always. Even when I was a kid, I said, I didn't know the difference, a priest, minister. And so I was tired of auditioning. I wanted to give something back to life. Theater is theater. I love it, but it's very self-absorbed profession because you're promoting yourself. You're not unless you're a big star or something. And so I got tired of that. I said, do I want to do this the rest of my life? I wanted to give something back. So I used those skills. And I left the professional theater and I followed my heart and I went to seminary. And so those skills transfer, right? Because when you're in front of a congregation, you're communicating. And I mean that in a healthy way. I don't mean I'm getting my jollies now because I didn't make it as an actor. And but and whatever make it means. I mean, like I said, I get a pension. But that's how I just shifted over because I want to serve and I wanted to serve then. And I still enjoy the theater. I go to theater when I can, still have some friends who are still out there auditioning and entertaining folks. But for me, I needed something a little more immediate where I was, I didn't want to say, oh, but when I become a big star, then I'll go and help and I'll go and serve, I'll go feed the hungry. I wanted to do it now. So here I am.
Fair play. So did you
Yeah.
feel a calling, if you will, or did you feel like, oh, hold on, I'm in the wrong place here with acting?
I always felt the calling because, as I said, as a kid, I didn't know. My parents were very religious. I'm not very religious in the traditional sense, but I do appreciate spirituality and religion. And sometimes they're the same thing, sometimes they're not. I had the calling, but I said, well, I'm going to try this path. But the calling was always there. But after I tried that path and got tired of it, I said, oh, let me come back around to what I really want to do. And here I am, when I do these TV shows or these documentaries about, religion and UFOs, it's almost like I'm back in show business again because they don't say you're auditioning, but they're interviewing you to see, what you can do. I've written some books. I speak around the country. It's a form of show business. I'm on stage,
Hmm.
live audiences. I'm talking to people. I'm on a show, camera, lights. It's almost the same thing.
Yeah, so you gave it up, but you didn't give it up, if you know what I mean. You circled back to it.
Exactly. I thought I had given it up, and no, those skills just transferred over, which is why I know I was doing the right thing. Um, I went around Robin Hood's barn, if you will, to
Yeah.
get there.
Yeah, I had this conversation with somebody last week or the week before, and it was all something similar in that nothing is wasted. A chapter in your life isn't
Yes.
wasted. You might think it is, but you're learning things there that you take forward into the next chapter. And
Always. Yeah.
mm,
There's a wonderful line in the remake of The Day the Earth Stood Still, and Canal Reeves is playing Klaatu, and he's trying to explain to the young kid, Will Smith's son, nothing is ever wasted. The universe
mm,
doesn't waste anything. What it is, though, I'm a different person than I was then. I'm much more relaxed because then if I didn't work, I didn't eat.
mm,
Now, I don't have that kind of desperation. I'm relaxed about it. I had a call a couple months ago about a TV documentary, and it's show business. And they interviewed me twice, and we're going to get back to you. And they didn't. And, it happens. But
mm,
back in the day, I'd be like, oh, what's going on? Did I do something wrong?
mm.
I need this job. I got to feed myself. And now it's just, okay, whatever happened, if they need me, they'll get back to me.
Exactly. It is what it is.
Yes.
Whatever. Let it go.
Yeah.
Big things
Yeah.
in my life.
Yeah.
This is going back to the ego side of things, but were you in
Yes.
anything we'd have seen you in? Are you in any movies or TV
You
shows or
know,
anything like that?
well, I did a lot of soaps. I did a lot of daytime TV dramas. I
Ah,
mean,
okay.
I was working in after. So if you watched All My Children or One Life to Live, those are
Hmm.
American TV novellas, you would probably see me. I have a little CD that I have of some of the roles I did. And they were kind of, it was like, a guest star or a day player role, but I still have them there. It was like another life. And I did some
Mm.
commercials and that kind of print modeling, print ads, stuff like that. Like I said, enough that, you know, it's at this stage of my life, like I said, it's not tons of money, but each month I get, a check from the pension from the Actors Union.
And that's always handy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, it takes care of my groceries, that kind of thing.
There you go, then. It's a
Yeah.
win-win. Okay,
Yes.
so moving on from there, and I know this is
Yeah.
almost a sideways or backwards step, really, but what
Oh, I
brought you
love the
in?
questions. I'm loving your questions.
Good stuff. So, what
Yeah.
brought you into the paranormal theatre? What was your introduction or your origin story?
Good question. My origin story was this, and I'll just give you a little backstory. I was not a believer in any of this stuff. I was raised Baptist. saved, I'm saved, you're not, that kind of theology. I am an experiencer. I'm a contactee. I just started watching Star Trek really about maybe 5 years ago, and even then, it's mostly Deep Space Nine.
Great
Um,
choice, by the way. That's my
oh, I
favorite.
love it.
Mm.
I love Cisco, and it's just I love all of them. But on December 28th, 1989, coming back from Mexico, um, I had an experience in my room where I saw a being that looked like that.
Oh, whoa.
And the person didn't have a robe on. He had on I'm saying he, um, I don't know if it was a he, had on it looked like a jumpsuit, but it was made of Reynolds wrap. It was shiny, like Reynolds wrap. It looked like what you see someone driving in the Indianapolis 500, a tight fitting kind of about 3, 4 feet tall.
And when you
Um,
say Reynolds wrap, is that cling film? Just
like aluminum foil.
okay, cool. I got it.
That's what I mean. I'm sorry. And like I said, we went to Mexico. We went to see the pyramids at Chichen Itza and Tulum. Um, Beautiful. You're wondering how they got all this information about astronomy, astrology. And when I got back, my girlfriend at the time said, "I'm going to stay home. I have been invited to a party." So we got off at JFK. We got back to Manhattan. She stayed home. I wanted to gloat. I was out in the sun. It was 85 degrees. 87 degrees. They were freezing in New York. I was out in the sun. I had a nice little tan. I just wanted to gloat. And so I went there, and we had no adult beverages were consumed. I had a bunch of deviled eggs, which I have a weakness for. And when I went back home, um, I don't know to this day whether I had to get up to use the bathroom or whether I just sensed someone in the room, but I sleep on my stomach. When I turned over, this person was there at the foot of the bed, surrounded by this blue light, like a cobalt blue,
Hmm.
surrounded by this white light. My girlfriend would not wake up, and I have never been so frightened in all my life. And eventually, I pulled the covers up over my head and got in the fetal position. When I did that, I heard this sound like wind, like whoosh, whoosh, and the temperature changed. Now I was living in a hotel, residential hotel, still there, Excelsior Hotel, 45 West 81st Street, between Columbus and Central Park West. So this wasn't in some rural area. This was on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. So when I pulled the covers down, I finally grew a pair, and I pulled the covers down. No one was there. I'm out of sorts, to say the least. My girlfriend wakes up. She's a very understanding person. We're still close friends even to this day. And she didn't say, "What are you, some kind of a nut? What are you?" And so she just calmed me down. But what started happening was every full and new moon for about 8 months, they would show up and they would paralyze me. And they would show me, they would never talk. They would show me pictures. Like they showed me a picture of a past life I had as a monk in the Catholic Church. They
Hmm.
showed an event that happened later on in my future. Just me, nothing spectacular, but me speaking at an event that 10, 15 years down the line actually happened. And then I started seeing other beings. And at this time, I was already on a quote unquote spiritual path. I was leaving the Baptist church. The theology didn't work for me anymore. I was reading existential philosophy. I was meditating. I was reading metaphysics. I was, reading tarot cards or I was doing all these things that were taking me on this path. But this first encounter, because I've seen other beings as well, um, expedited my spiritual growth. I wound up finding the Unitarian Universalist congregation church, which was much more open-minded, much more progressive as far as social causes go. The only thing was they were not open to the mystical part of life. but I've navigated that. I'm still there, and they're still there. Um, but at one time, someone tried to get me fired from my church because they said I turned my TV on in the middle of the night, and I saw my minister talking about little green men, and I don't like it. I'm uncomfortable. And this woman tried to get me fired. She came to the board, and
Oh,
yeah,
no need for that. Yeah, that's all
yeah, yeah.
strange. So how old were you then when this you remember this first encounter?
Yeah, December 28th, 1989. So I'm 67 this year. I guess I was in my 30s, 34,
Hmm.
35 years old, maybe a little older.
Now that going with the sort of like, if you will, the abduction phenomenon or contactee phenomenon, it sounds quite late, doesn't it? Is that just what you remember as your first thing, or were there earlier ones?
Well, when I investigated more and went to a hypnotherapist, I had the late Bud Hopkins.
Oh.
We became friendly, and Bud regressed me. And a woman by the name of Jean Mundy, she regressed me. According to them, I had we focused on the visits that I was having, but a very good friend of mine who was a very talented psychic. And he didn't even know he had this ability and he took a class on it. Very accurate, like a pure clairvoyant. His name was Gene Ashley. He was an actor as well. He told me, I'll put it like this. I never
Hmm.
mentioned it to him, and he told me.
Oh wow.
He told me
Yeah.
that about these beings, and I was afraid to tell anybody. But he was telling me, Michael, this has been going on not only in this lifetime, but in other lifetimes. And it was amazing because, like I said, I never once mentioned it to him.
That strikes up a lot of questions, which I'm going to come back to in a second. I think the
Mhm.
first one I want to get to is, and I've asked somebody else this before, but let's just see if I get your take on it. Why the foot of the bed? Why do they always appear, or seemingly appear, at the foot of the bed?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Thinking about it, it probably keeps a distance, whether, because I have heard of people waking up and being very physical with them,
Mm.
because it's fight or flight. I think that may have something to do with it. You know, initially there was only that one being. I've heard of people being surrounded on the
Mm.
bed, but other than that, I don't really know.
Hmm. Yeah, I take it what you say. That makes sense to me. Keeping a distance, arm's length at least.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
the blue glow. What do you take that to be?
It was a beautiful light. I mean, looking back, then I was so frightened.
Hmm.
I think it was just their aura. I think it's just their aura. I mean, this because I every time I had a visit, um, my energy level was off the charts. I could go 2, 3 weeks with barely sleeping. I noticed my hair and nails grew faster physiologically. I needed less sleep. I started getting into energy healing and Reiki after that too.
Hmm.
But how it affected me was it just opened up my worldview. But the best way I can describe it for me personally, because I want to be clear, I'm not saying that all these beings want to sing kumbaya or with you,
Yeah.
but I was fortunate enough, at least with that initial contact, my heart felt so open. um I felt I felt more alive. I felt I could risk being vulnerable. It was no big deal for me to be honest, to be open, to be transparent. Um, I'll just never forget it. And I know people have had um, negative experiences, and you know, I don't poo-poo that. I don't say my experiences, at least at the beginning, were very positive. They scared me, um, but when I had to look at my fear, and I had to ask myself, aside from they look bizarre, aside from them walking through your wall, aside from that, um, how has your life changed? And it had changed for the better.
Yeah. And I'm with you, by the way, because if I, and I'm not saying I have or haven't, I don't think I have, but if I saw something in my room at whatever time of day, this random and alien looking, you're naturally going to be fearful. You can't do
I,
anything about it. It's going to hit you.
I have never had that kind of fear. And I've been in some scary situations by chance. But um it started to shift me away from, everything shifted. It was shattered reality. And so I'm not into propulsion systems and back engineering, the tech part of it. I mean, greater minds than I. I'm wired to look at things from a more interior, a spiritual level. And so that's what I've always been interested in. I mean, I think even now, the governments of the world, at least my government, is trying to be a little more transparent. And I do think what they're addressing needs to be addressed. But I think it's much more to this than just national security and technology. I think there's a consciousness shift that needs to happen as well. Otherwise, we'll destroy ourselves.
I'm with you. I think also along the same lines. I'm really interested in the technology, but that's an aside because actually the most fertile ground is inside people. And it's that
Yes.
awakening that
Yes.
really opens your eyes. And when you do see the world through different eyes, it's bigger somehow and better.
It
And I
is.
think we need to get there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so I know, secrecy. I get it. How do you become the greatest country in the world? Well, you keep secrets,
Mm.
and you keep other people from becoming the greatest country in the world. But I do think, and this what fuels me, and people are hungry for it when I am speaking to live audiences, and podcast, and people want to know, how do I navigate the world that I live in now? It's busier, it's more chaotic, it's a lot of violence. And that, to me, um, that has to be an interior change. That you don't have to recreate the wheel. There are plenty of saints and avatars who've given us hints, who lived in worlds just like this, but maybe weren't as technologically at times as advanced. But I think that's what people are hungry for. And when I talk about my experiences, people listen. But when I talk about the transformation, you can hear a pin drop because they
Mm.
want that, and you can get that. You don't have to be visited by an off-world intelligence. I know people who've had eureka moments jogging at sunrise or at sunset. People can have them, meditating. You can have them from near-death experiences. But it's that uh, throwing water in your face and saying, "Wake up."
Yes.
It's that eureka moment. And so mine happened to be this, but there are other ways to get there.
Yeah, and I agree. And that's what's going to get me to the motive for this being, whatever it may have been.
Mhm.
Was it putting you on a path so that you, Reverend Michael Carter, could openly talk about it to wake other people up? Are you a
I think
conduit to
so.
wake in other people? Yeah.
I think so. And because when I talked to my friend Gene, he was saying that that Michael, you have nothing to be afraid of these beings. He said that you've been with them in other times and other lifetimes, and you're just here on this particular planet at this particular time because this is where you were needed. Now, that was good for me to hear, but I realized that, I was in New York, and I was living a fast life. I was an actor. I was in the bars. I was hanging out, man. I was doing drugs. I was
No,
sexing. I
wow.
was drugging. I was living a fast life because that was the showbiz life. And um, what, what, when that happened, it it was like cold water in my face. Never once did anybody say or imply you're going down a wrong path. But what I got was, this is not really what you signed up for. It's your life. You do what you want to do. But it wasn't I'll give an example.
Hmm.
Because we give, I know a lot of other experiencers, obviously, but people in general, we give our power away, whether it's collectively or what have you. So I had a dream one night. This was early on, and I'm in like a little scout craft, you know, And it's a two-seater. And in front of me is one of my gray friends, and I'm in like the back seat. And so in the dream, he stops the craft and he says, "You take the helm." And I said, "No, no, I don't want to." He said, "Oh, you will." And he got in the back with me. And the next thing I knew, I was in the front and I started going forward, and then I woke up. That to me was, Michael, yes, we're visiting you, but it's still your life. We're not controlling your life. You have to be at the wheel of your life. And I think a lot of times it's so easy, whether it's just traditional religion or whatever you want to call it, spirituality. We let someone else take the responsibility. God made this happen. God did this, or God told me. And I don't want to mess with anyone's belief system here, but it always begs the question: but aren't you in on your life? Don't you get to make decisions? Because after all, it is your life.
Mm. Now, that dream, it can be seen a number of ways, can it? It can be seen as a
Yeah.
dream with a psychic message, so to speak, right?
Yep.
Whether it's from an alien being or whether it's from an actual spiritual source, whatever we want to call it. Or it could be taken as a physical experience that happened to you. Where do you sit on that one?
Well, I think that because you can take I could take this a number of ways, but I'm also, I'm not a Jungian, but I like some of his dream analysis techniques where if you want to unpack the meaning of a dream, you're everyone in the dream. You know
Yes.
what I
Yeah.
mean? I
Yeah. Yeah.
like that. But I also, well, not but in addition to that, I think that after you have the dream and if you stick with it, you make the right decision. Because it always comes back to your decision. I could go to a psychic, I could go to a dream interpreter, I could go, and they could give me, their take, which I would weigh. But eventually, I'm the one who really knows what it means. You
Yeah.
know,
And I get that from a dream perspective. And I suppose, in a way, it doesn't matter where the message is coming from as long as you hear the message, I suppose, is
Yeah,
the real
well, yeah.
answer.
I mean, some people could say God gave me the dream. Some will say the universe gave me the dream. Some people say the extraterrestrials gave me the dream. Some people will say, well, the dream just came out of your subconscious. It doesn't matter where it comes from. It matters what you do with it.
Hmm.
And so, because you can wind up getting into the paralysis of analysis. And I'm a curious person,
True.
but you can really go, you just and then you miss it. Because I think in the inner journey you can't get here. I'm pointing to my heart for people who get, you can't always get there from here.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to let that go.
You're stuck in
And
there. I'm
yeah,
guilty of that one myself. Yes, I know
yeah,
that one.
yeah.
Hmm. Okay, one more thing about your first encounter, which is to say the bit where you're paralyzed, although you managed to pull the thing up at the end, and your girlfriend at the time doesn't hear anything, she doesn't wake up. Presumably, you're trying to scream or touch her or nudge her or whatever. What do you think is happening there? Is that you being paralyzed because they're controlling you somehow, or are you somehow ported into a pocket universe where only you have this experience? What have
Well,
you thought about it?
this is what I feel. And I wasn't paralyzed the first time. Um, Thereafter, I started to be paralyzed when they would come. I think there's a couple possibilities. Now, when I got regressed, when I pulled the covers up over my head and I felt like I was outside, but I also felt like I was in my room. I think they took me out. Well, I'm sure of it because when I was regressed, I was on a table. I never
Uh,
remembered that part. Um, so they know how to, I would say, manipulate, cooperate, negotiate the time-space continuum. So that part, I was on the table, and so there were things going on there. Um, I I feel that probably, so not to have a heart attack, maybe that was the best way to do it for me. There are people who say they've had conversations with these beings. I would love to, but I'm in fight or flight. And sometimes they can manipulate you and your nervous system to kind of calm you down. But I feel like they knew what was best for me at that time. Now, I don't feel violated. That's why I'm glad. That's why I never say I'm an abductee, because the word, and some people are. I had an experience, and I had several. I had an experience where this praying mantis
Oh,
person visited me, or this reptilian person visited me. This experience where this Nordic person, this blonde person, healed a blood clot that I had on July 4th, 2013. I never felt that something untoward was happening to me. And so that helped me. As a matter of fact, there was a couple years when I wasn't having any physical visitations at all, and I missed them. Even though I knew when I see them, my heart would come out of my chest. But I there was a longing, and I was always awake when I saw them. It wasn't like I had this dream. I mean, these beings came. The reptilian person touched me. Well, at some other times they all touched me. So it was very real. But I just don't feel um, like, I would tell you this, aside from the birth of my daughter, who is now, what will be 18 next month,
hmm.
these are the most life-changing experiences that's ever happened to me. And I would not change them.
Fair play to you. And I could understand why they would sit, high in your consciousness, in
Mhm.
your memory banks, and God knows what else. Um, it's interesting that you have those experiences with all those four creatures that you mentioned: the Nordics, reptilians, greys, and the
Mhm.
mantids, because it seems like to be a common theme, doesn't it, amongst a lot of experiencers, the
Yes.
same four. And in a way, what that's indicating or suggesting is that somehow there's a collection of those beings that are not controlling, but almost pushing our lives into certain directions, like we're pawns on a chess table or something. That's what I
I
kind of
see.
think.
I don't see it that way. One of the things is, when I look at the Bible and I looked at other texts, whether it's the Vedic scriptures, the Dhammapada, the Upanishad, but clearly they're telling us that these beings have been here the whole time. And some of them, if you look at the Sumerian text, the Egypt, so they've always been here. We've just been told that they haven't. We've just been told that we don't live in a populated universe. But back then, our ancestors knew that we didn't. And they knew. They're telling us this is what happened. And so some of these beings were here um, to keep us as a slave race, and just to keep us as ignorant, and that we wouldn't even know we were naked. And there were some of these beings who were just here to observe. And there were some of these beings who helped us, who assisted us, who came to people when they couldn't have children, or came to them in the Bible when Daniel, the angels in the when he's in the lion's den. So these beings have always been here. And so I don't look at it so much as um, that we're being pawns. I do look at it as we need to wake up and grow up and say that we live in a populated universe, and that we always have, and that when we go back and reread our religious texts, or the text from the Mesoamericans, the Mayans, they talk about this in the Popol Vuh. If you go to Nigeria, if you go to Denmark, they all have these stories about beings coming down and interacting with us. Some of the stories, it's almost like they created us, or they genetically engineered us. And
Mm.
I think that it's time now that we wake up to this, even through the lies and the misinformation and the disinformation of our governments. I do not believe that we're pawns, that we don't have free will. I think even in biblical times we may have been, but even we woke up out of that. But I do think, because free will simply means that you can do anything you want, you just have to pay the consequences for it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. To be a pawn means I have no agency. And I don't believe that's true. I don't believe that the Buddha or Jesus or these other Joan of Arc, I don't believe they came here to tell us that we were pawns. I believe they came here to show us how to have a better way to live, how to connect with that source, whether you call it God or the force or what have you. That's what I believe. And that's been my experience.
Well, that makes sense, and well done on saying the Force, because that's high up in my in my
Mhm.
thought. I love the old Jedi. Which brings us to your book, Alien Scriptures, Extraterrestrials in the Holy Bible. I think it's a very apt place to pop this part of the conversation. So, what's the story of this book as a summary, and then we'll dive into it.
This okay. After my experiences, and I wasn't the first one, Dr. Barry Downing, I can go on. There were some other people, they weren't all ministers, who had speculated about UFOs in the Bible, but he was the one who got me going because he was a clergy person. I said, if these beings could come visit me in 1989 CE, then they were probably here in 1989 BCE and beyond. The other thing was, though, as I was leaving the religion of my childhood, because I could no longer reconcile the loving God that Jesus was talking about with the God of the Old Testament, I started rereading the Bible. And it came to me that if I put the word ET or extraterrestrial everywhere I saw the word angel, the Bible made much more sense. And that we could argue that Jesus was talking about a different being. I believe he was, but I could not bow down and say prayers to a being like Yahweh, who was vicious and had temper tantrums and was genocidal. So, and the other thing was that I knew people who were having these experiences, but because they were so unpleasant, they were painting a picture that all of these beings were malevolent, and that's not
Mm.
true. And so we were stereotyping them like we do with each other. So that was the impetus for me to write that book. I'm always grateful to my seminary. I went to Union Theological Seminary in New York City, one of the top seminaries in the country, a very liberal Christian seminary, very progressive. And they could have said, young man, you will not graduate from this institution talking about that subject. But I was encouraged. A couple of my professors asked me if I would stay on and consider a PhD after I wrote my thesis. Of course, I didn't. I didn't want to do that. So that's how that book came to fruition.
Excellent. Can you give us some examples of passages from the Bible that you say are a reference to aliens, then, where you substituted ET for
Oh, well,
angels?
I think there's so many. If you go to the Exodus with Moses, when he's talking to Yahweh, and Yahweh has to tell him to stand back, because he says, you can't see my face and live. And Moses talks about this craft in Hebrew, it's called the kavod. And it's loud, there's thunder and lightning. And he says to Moses, you have to stay back in the crevice of the rock. Otherwise it will kill you. When he comes down from talking to Yahweh, and his face shone, the writer says his face shone. Well, that sounds seriously like resonant radiation, being
Mm.
close to this. You look at Ezekiel, the flying chariot, and Elijah. Clearly, these people are talking about craft, and they're trying to explain in the vernacular of their day what they were seeing. If you look at the book of Enoch, and he's
Yes, I was going to
talking about
mention
the
that. Yeah,
fallen
yeah.
angels, and even when you go to the New Testament, our ancestors knew that people don't fly on clouds, but they were trying to say what they were seeing. So Jesus, he leaves on a cloud. He tells them he'll be back on a cloud. In Hebrew, in Moses, they call it the pillar of cloud by day, the pillar of fire by night. It's in the sky. That right there makes it unidentified. It glows. The pillar of fire by night, the pillar of cloud by day. We know that now some ships can cloak themselves or cloud themselves in smoke, or you can't tell whether it's cloud. So they're trying to use the vernacular of their day. So clearly, these beings are talking about, these people are talking about unidentified craft. Obviously, the Vedic scriptures talking about the Vimanas and the ancient kings who flew through the air. It's right there for us. We would just, we would just, eyes wide shut. We would talk not to look at it that way. But when you really get into it, you don't have to know a lot of biblical languages. You can see that clearly. These beings are talking about, these people are talking about a populated universe, and they were godlike because of the technology that they had. So it's all in the Bible. It's all through the Bible.
And I'm with you, by the way. I specifically don't know necessarily all the stories and passages from the book, from the Bible, because I genuinely haven't read it. However, I do know some of them from the Ancient Aliens TV program, which you've been on. And to be fair, I'm on the same page as you. It makes sense. You write what you see, you draw what you see. Not everything is imagination.
Well, see, that's the thing. That's the thing. And I'm looking at some biblical verses so I could be more specific. So we can go back to that question.
Okay, thank you.
If we look in history, okay, I'll put it to you like this. Around the 6th or 7th century, if you read the book of Second Kings, if you read Samuel, First and Second Samuel, and you look at history, there were two kings, Hezekiah, and then later his grandson Josiah. They were Yahwist. They believed in Yahweh. When you read the book of Jeremiah, Jeremiah is lamenting because after all these many, 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 many years, people are still talking bad about Yahweh. There's still what I would call altars to Yahweh, and he's lamenting. Why can't you be with Yahweh? And they're altars to Asherah, Baal, Dagon. These names all in the Bible, these other gods. Okay. And that's why the 10 Commandments, Yahweh says, you should have no other gods before me. I'm a jealous God. Well, he wasn't joking, because there were other beings who have carved up the earth. We would call that an invasion today. So Hezekiah and Josiah, grandfather and grandson, what they decided to do was they were going to tear down, which they did, all the monuments, all the altars to these other gods, because they wanted to have one God. They wanted Judaism to be monotheistic, but it wasn't at the beginning. None of these religions really were. And so what did they do? They took everything down, and they decided we're going to have one God, Yahweh, one high priest, one temple in Jerusalem. So you see where I'm going? Why? Why would they do that? It's just easier to manage. It's easier to govern. It's easier to govern people. There's not going to be there's not going to be any fake news. There's no fake news. There are no other gods. It's just Yahweh. And we saw it with Romans. Remember, with Rome, it was God, the emperor, the high priest, and then it came down to us. And so this is where we learned that from. This is where human beings learned how to rule, how to make urban living. We went from hunter-gatherers in the span of history to having sanitation, cities, monetary system, banks. How did that happen? It was jump-started. When you read the Sumerian kings list, when you read the Egyptian kings list, you read some of these kings ruled for like 80,000 years. they're not human beings if you're living that long and ruling. And
Mm.
so we learned some good things from them, from some of them. But we also learned so we get cities now. They teach us sanitation. They teach us how to make beer. They teach us how to, and this is in all the cultures, they talk about this. Why would they lie about that? Why would they say we didn't know how to live on the land? These beings came down and they taught us. Why would they make that up? But now you have rulers. Okay, so now I got a ruler. Okay, now I have a king. So there's some people who have power, some people who don't. Now I have a monetary system. That means there's some people who control the money and some people don't. Now we're not living in an agrarian situation. Now we're living denser in cities and what have you. So now we got to own property. That means there's some people who own property and some people who don't. And you look at some of these beings who did not give a flying you know what about us. And then some of them leave, or they mingle. They go native, if you will, and so they're with Earth women, and they have these offspring. Some of them are giants. Some of them. So now they're half human and half ET, and now they take over. They're kings, and they rule ruthlessly. And then you get human kings. So who you think they're gonna rule like? The rulers before them.
Mm.
And it makes sense that this is where we are today. But it doesn't mean that all of them mean us harm. But the thing is, the Old Testament it's not a book about God. The idea of God is in there, but it's about our ancestors trying to tell us through the shock and the trauma what it was like to live with the Elohim, with their cousins, the Anunnaki. That is what that book is about. And once you look at it that way, you don't have the moral conundrum. You don't have the mental gymnastics of, well, wait a minute. If this is God, why is God wiping out Sodom and Gomorrah? Why is God so concerned about you being circumcised? Why is God so concerned about intermarriage? Why is God saying go over to Canaan and kill the men, women, and children? And that's why people leave religion. It's one of the reasons, because they're saying, how do you rectify this? How do you justify this? Because if your God is genocidal, you have to defend genocide. If your God is racist, you have to defend being racist. If your God is misogynistic, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The wars that we see in Gaza, they all worship Yahweh. The war that we see in Ukraine, they worship the biblical God. That's not a God of the cosmos. There's not even a Hebrew word for that kind of being. Omniscient, omnipresent, omnipotent. There's not even a Hebrew word for that. They're not talking about gods, man. They're talking about other entities who have carved this planet up. If you look at, hold on.
No worries.
Okay, if you look at Deuteronomy 32, chapter 8, if you read that, and Yahweh is given people and lands. Yahweh is one of the Elohim. They will use the word the Lord. If you see the word Lord, just change that to Elohim. It's a mistranslation. But he's given lands. And usually when he wasn't given a lot of land, but he was given the tribe of Jacob. That's why he's taking everybody's land, because he wasn't given land. And he's at war with you. You don't worship these other gods. If you go to 2 Kings 1, Yahweh's angry that King Ahaziah, he's sick. And he calls on one of the Elohim. They say he calls on one of the gods of Ekron to heal him. Yahweh hears this and he goes ballistic. He says, you're going to die. He says, are there no Elohim here that you could have asked for help from? Who's going to worship someone like that nowadays? Okay,
Nobody.
and it's right there. It's right there. And so if you go through these passages, Numbers 31. If you read that chapter, Moses commands everyone after the battle against the Midianites to kill everyone except the virgin girls. And it's right there in the text. It says all women who have ever slept with a man are to be killed. Yahweh commands this. What kind of God commands that? That sounds like an entity.
Yes. It doesn't sound like a loving God, does it?
No, no, no.
No.
And that mistranslation of gods, because gods is in masculine plural in Genesis 6, we've just taken that. Some people say that's the Holy Trinity. No, it's not the Trinity. The Trinity was a concept that wasn't invented until the 3rd century. There was no Trinity. The Hebrews didn't believe in a Trinity.
So ultimately, what we're
Yeah,
getting at here is that the Bible has, let's just call it truth of humans' interaction with beings from wherever, yeah, wherever they reside, and that somehow between then, its original intention, and now we've lost that connection to it. So we're looking at it through the wrong lens.
exactly. Because these beings were fighting among themselves. The king of Persia is fighting this king, the king here, and they had armies. And who was in those armies? Because if the God owned the land that you were on, you had to support that. And yes, we were taught that the Old Testament is a book about God. And we were taught that it's monotheistic. It was never monotheistic. Judaism was never monotheistic. And there were church, Origin is one of them. But there were church fathers who had no problem with the populated universe. Christianity had no problem with that. They knew that. But Judaism begins, and you know, if you're looking at Genesis, of course, that's a retake of the Mesopotamian stories, a remake of, you know, the flood and what have you. But it was never monotheistic. It became monotheistic, and scriptures were changed in the 6th and 7th century with Hezekiah and Josiah. And it's right there when you read Samuel. He's like, why are you, Yahweh's been good to us. You talk with David, is what Yahweh's been good to us. But they were sick of Yahweh. The first human king is Saul. That's the clue. And in Samuel, when they tell Samuel, they accuse Samuel of being corrupt, they accuse his sons of being corrupt, and they say, we don't want Yahweh anymore. We want a human king. So what does Yahweh do? He appoints Saul, but Saul's not bloodthirsty enough for him. But if this is God, why would human beings say, we don't want God, we want Saul?
Yeah, doesn't make sense. And
It
there's a
doesn't
lot
make
to
sense.
question there.
Yeah.
Do you think then, right? Obviously, forgive the word, but it's apt in this scenario. Our understanding has been bastardized across the years between then and now. Is that where your awakening falls in? Because you're here to not necessarily translate it correctly, but like awaken people to a true history, which is what's reflected in Ancient Aliens.
I'm here to ask people to look at the possibility that what we've been told was wrong.
Yes.
And here are some things. Don't take my word for it. You look at it. And you, like I said, you don't have to be a scholar of biblical languages. All you need to know is that the short history I gave you, and they can go more into it. I'm giving you a truncated version, and that the mistranslations of Elohim, uh, uh, and Elohim means, you know, those who came down from above. That tells you right there. But if you stop reading the Bible as a moral book and read it for the stories that are in there, it makes more sense. I mean, otherwise, if you're reading the Bible as a moral book about God, you're going to turn your mind into a pretzel, because this is not an omnipotent God. Some of the things he does are heinous.
Yeah, a lot of
And
moral
and
quandaries.
yes, and that's why a lot of people say I could not reconcile the two. I could not.
Yeah. I had a conversation with Mark Anthony recently, and it was a theme in that conversation all about lenses and how you see things. And then once you get the right lens, you'll see things for the truth that there is in there, you know? And I
Yes,
think that's
yes,
ultimately what we need to try and find is the right lens to see the right text, the right film, the right media, the right people, intentions, anything, you know? the right
Well,
lens.
at least to get it out there. I mean, I'm pouring my heart out here, and people could say, it doesn't get, and that's okay, because we all have to make our own decisions at the end. But I could not worship an entity like that. I just couldn't.
No,
And not only because I'm on some moral high ground, which in some ways I'm saying I am, but it just doesn't make sense. The Yahweh is not an omniscient, omnipresent God. He doesn't know what's going on everywhere. He's not all knowing. He's not all seeing. And he's bloodthirsty.
yeah, it doesn't sound like the God that everyone has pictured in their mind, does it?
Yeah. But people kind of gloss over that. And
Yeah,
again, I say that if you worship a God who is bloodthirsty, you're going to have to justify bloodthirst. If you worship a God who is vengeful, then you're going to have to justify vengeance because that's your God.
yeah, agreed. Now, how much pushback have you had from, I don't know, whether it's the church itself or from just people in general? Where do they take your book? Is it sit well with them, or do you get
It
negative?
does. It does now. Of course, there was some pushback, but the thing is what keeps me out there is that there are not many clergy, who are talking about this, and there are not many clergy who are coming out and saying, "Hey, I'm an experiencer." Um, Ironically enough, the Catholic Church uh, has always been talking about this.
Yeah.
And back in 2009, Pope Benedict, they had a symposium. Benedict the 16th, the most conservative pope in my lifetime, had come out and said that we should not be surprised that we are not alone in this universe. He also came out and said, which I thought it would be more blowback, that you should not use the name Yahweh. Yahweh is not the name of God. And you can take that a couple of ways. Are you saying it's not the Jewish name for God? Because we all, people call this being by many names. But he was saying, no, that's not his name. That's not the word for God. So he was saying that Yahweh is not God, Yahweh is something else.
Mm.
And so there you have it. The Vatican has been very open about this. The late Corrado Balducci, one of the Vatican exorcists, said that it is a populated universe that we live in, and people who tell you that they've seen these beings are not psychotic. They need to be taken seriously. For him to come out and say that, he had to have the permission of the Pope. Edgar Mitchell's been talking about this, before he died.
That's
Paul
right.
Hellyer had been talking about it. Um, uh, uh, Elia Hassad, what's his name? He used to be with the, hold on,
It's
he
okay.
was the Brigadier General of Space Security, Hayam Mashad, back in December of 2020, came out and said, we've been in contact with these beings for over 70 years. Now, if you do the math, that takes you right back to Truman
Yeah, who
and
supposedly had
Eisenhower.
the meeting. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. And he says that there is a galactic federation. He says that countries of the world have been in touch with these beings, and that there is that there's a base on the moon, there's a base on Mars. I mean, for him to say that, he had to have permission to say that. And guess what? He wasn't medicated. No one locked him up.
No, I know it's strange. I think there's a couple of things at play here. First off, I like the mention to the Roman Catholic Church because we know they've got observatories and everything, haven't we? And they're
Yes, yes,
supposedly have got a lot of maybe texts or artifacts or items stored away in their vaults. I
they
would
know.
love that to be true, and I'd love to see
Oh,
it.
I think it is true.
Yeah, I think
Listen,
it is.
I do too. And I'm not a Catholic. I love the ritual. I play Gregorian chants. I love all that. The theology I'm not um crazy about, but that's okay. You
Yeah,
don't throw away a Rolls Royce because it has a scratch on it. And I love Francis for trying to bring them into the 21st century. But who else, what other religious organization publicly is trying to prepare the public for this story.
Yeah, and I agree. That's what it is. It is
Yeah,
preparation. And I think
yeah,
preparation is coming from a lot of sources all at once. And that's probably part of the awakening, which is where the contact with people like yourself, Terry Lovelace, who I spoke last week, all these people who feel almost compelled to say the message of, I was contacted.
yes,
And
yes,
here's something I said to Tiff, my girlfriend, yesterday, you've got thousands upon thousands, if not millions of people all going through the contactee experience. Not all of them are mad. Not all of them
yes,
are druggies
yes.
or alcohols. There's a sizable proportion of those that are just normal people like me and you. They can't all be lying. So it's
No, they
such,
can't.
no,
They
it's
can't.
impossible.
Yeah, yeah, and you think about people in other countries. This is not the kind of story that makes you get closer to people. This is not the story that makes your family love you more. This is not that kind. So why would you come out and say that?
Excellent. Yeah. So there's a lot of people on this earth that have these experiences. Not everyone's a liar. It's just there's something to it. It's a big thing. I definitely 100% believe in it. And I know you clearly do as well.
Yeah, I mean, when we look at our religious texts, our ancestors are clearly in talking to, interfacing with other intelligences. What you can call them angels, you can call them what you want. You can call them the jinn, as they do in some parts of the Quran. They talk about angels. You can talk, whether you're reading the Mesopotamian texts or the Vedic scriptures, clearly they are talking to other powerful beings. That is a contact experience.
I
That's what we
agree.
would call it today. That's what we
Yes.
would call it today. So, whether it's done by, I don't believe it's done intentionally, but I can't say for sure. And that's what religions get made out of,
Yeah.
these contact experiences.
Well, you look at angels themselves. I know you will have heard this before, but by their very nature, they are not of this earth. Therefore, semantically, they are extraterrestrials, aren't they? So even
Well,
looking at it
yeah,
that way.
yeah. If they're not from this earth, and not only that, nowhere in the Bible does it say they have wings. Now, I'm not saying they don't. I'm just saying that they don't.
Hmm.
I think wings were put on these beings because our ancestors were trying to tell us these beings could fly.
Could fly. Yeah, that's right.
And so they are messengers. That's what the word, is angelos in Greek, it's malek in Hebrew. They are messengers. And mostly they're coming to give you a message. Hey, I know you're past menopause, but you're going to get pregnant. Hey, I need to tell you this. The Lord said, the Lord is probably the captain of the ship, but you need to do this. I mean, they're coming. Daniel's in the lion's den. The angel comes in. Not only does Daniel not get killed, but he leaves. When Peter is locked up in Acts, who comes? An angel comes. The walls fall down and he walks out free. Some of these beings are here to help, and some of them are just here for resources, and some of them are here just to see how's this experiment going to turn out. But this has been going on for millennia, and
Yeah.
it's going on now.
I think you're right with that because if you took the human species, right, and let's just say we as a species go out into space tomorrow, we discover a planet of beings tomorrow, you're going to get loads of different expeditions, aren't you, from all the different countries, all going to study different things. So it looks like they've all got different agendas, but ultimately, do you know what I'm getting at though?
Yeah. And some of them do have different agendas.
Mm.
I've been fortunate, but there are beings here who probably don't want to be our best friends. But so what? They're human beings here that don't want to be our best friends.
Yes, that's my
This
point.
is,
Yeah.
yeah, this is just life.
Yes,
And
that's it.
so, just because someone is more technically advanced than you doesn't mean they're your best friend, but it also doesn't mean they're not. And some of these beings clearly have mastered a high level of spirituality as well as a high level of technology. And maybe one day we'll get there. Right now, we got the technology part, but we don't have the consciousness part.
Yes. Yes,
Yeah.
I completely agree on that. And it makes you wonder then, doesn't it, if we did recover craft, that we've then zoomed that bit at the expense of this bit, you know?
Well, I mean, if you look at the narrative here, I know you're in the UK, but here the government has taken over the narrative. And you're not hearing anything about a change in consciousness. You're not hearing anything about, some of these beings are here to help, maybe some aren't. All you're hearing is tech and national security. And if I control the narrative, then I control the story and I can control. And so that's what governments do. They want to keep secrets, they want to keep power, and we're no different. But eventually,
I agree.
People are ready for truth. They really are.
Well, I know I am. I know you are.
They really are. I mean, just using what I mentioned about what Chaim Echad had said, if he's saying there's a galactic federation and that some of these beings want disclosure and some of them don't, because that's what he said, that means there's a table where Earth is being talked about. I'm saying we don't need to be talked about. We want a seat at the table.
Yes. I want to
Not
see
just
that
talk
episode of
about
Star Trek. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. What about us? What about what the people need to say? And I get it why governments don't want that, because instead of just saying I'm an Earthling or I'm a Republican or a Democrat, now you throw those labels away. You say I'm a citizen of the cosmos. I can't control people who think like that. People like that are dangerous.
Yes, that's
because
right.
they're thinking outside of the box. They're thinking bigger.
Yeah, I know.
I can't control
dumb people down to control them. It's the old adage, tactic of old, that one.
Yeah.
I love the idea of Star Trek in itself because it's an amazing concept, and it obviously fits this scenario you're mentioning about the Galactic Federation, right? Do you think that the Star Trek origin came from that, or do you think it came about because consciousness got to that level?
No, well, I think it's both. I think Gene Roddenberry was talking to certain people. And so he put, if you want to get a message out, you can, you can couch it in certain ways. I believe it. But I think what's more important than that is here is a man who was a brigadier general of space security. And this wasn't 200 years ago. This was December 9th, 2020. And he says there is a galactic federation that we've been in why would he lie about that? Why would Paul Hellyer? And to me, that's the news. It's easy to go.
It is the news, right? But why does the news disappear in a cycle of what I would term crap about the Kardashians and stuff? This is the news. This is what everyone wants to hear, isn't it? Or should hear, I should say.
Well, I think you hit it on the head. We get that out. We don't want that. We don't want that. And so we control. That's why you have corporations owning all these TV stations and what they get to decide what's going to be news. And so that slips out. Okay. A lot of people didn't even know this. I didn't even know that he had said that. And that slips out. So you miss it. If you don't get it there, you miss it. And then if you only hear it once in a while, then you go, it may be fake. It just doesn't. But I think that's changing with Grush and other people here. It's not people, I'll just put it like this. People don't snicker so much anymore when I talk about this.
That is 100% truth. There's been a massive step change.
Yes. So there's been a change. Whether it's been conscious or not, there's a change.
Yeah, I've definitely noticed that in my lifetime. Because, I'm coming up 50 years old, and back even when I was 20, I was talking about this, and a lot of my mates were saying, it's rubbish, they don't exist. Well, you're thinking in a small box, aren't you? You're thinking very narrow. Hey ho. Let's move on to your other book, which is an interesting topic for me: the metaphysics of spiritual healing, the power of affirmative prayer.
Yeah.
This is a good one because it opens the mind to thinking. It's chicken and egg for me, right? And I'll explain that once you tell me about the book, and then I'll formulate the question properly.
Okay. I was taught that God, I'm using that word intentionally for lack of, I don't like the word. I know there's baggage with it, but this is what I was out there. And even though Jesus talked about the kingdom of heaven was within you, even though Buddha talks about going within, everything was out there. And I was taught to pray to this God. I was taught that I was a sinner. I was worthless until his son got beat up and died. And otherwise I wouldn't be worth anything. And then I would have to pray to this God like Santa Claus. And if I was good, I'd be rewarded, maybe. And if I was bad, I definitely wouldn't be rewarded. And then I'd be barbecued for eternity.
Yeah, what a story. Yeah.
Oh, but as I got away from that and I got into quantum physics, the consciousness and everything being one, I would read the Bible, and I noticed that when Jesus did certain things, like when he fed the 5,000, he would always give thanks as if it already happened. It was like if I turn that switch on, I know as soon as I turn that switch on, that light's going to come on most of the time. Today
Yeah,
it
not
came
without
on
broken bulb. Yeah.
yeah. But then I started reading quantum physics and that kind of thing, and that I'm affected, and I mean there's no separation for anything, and my consciousness changes. The way I see the world is the world that reflects back to me, and so I started saying, well, what would that look like in prayer? Again, wasn't the only one, but there's a scientific basis for prayer, and so I said, I will be thankful, because gratitude and forgiveness are the keys to anything, whether you believe in a God or not. But I was just going to be thankful for what I had. I was going to, and anything else I wanted, I would pray about it. I would focus on it, and knowing that I could make that happen. It was almost a godlike thing within me. So instead of saying, God, please help me, please give me this, please, 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 I would say, thank you, universe, force, whatever, for what I have, and this is what I would need. And you know my needs. I would give up control. So I was affirming prayer instead of begging. And that could be healing. Listen, I was a chaplain for many, many years. I know the difference. I met people who were healed. They went to the hospital, they weren't taking care of themselves, they were healed, and they went right back out and did the same thing again. I know people, they were cured and they went back out. I know people who were healed and they may have died, but they had a healing and they can go on to whatever is next with that sense of wholeness. And so I wrote that book because I also wanted not to be just known as the UFO minister, which I am known as. But I was trying to get away from it. It's one of my favorite books. And even now, I pray. I have a good prayer life. It's steady, a meditation life. But I just know gratitude and envisioning what it is that I want. And I'm not talking about cars and clothes and all that, but being thankful. And if I'm in whatever I want, I know that I'm going to get it. That means I may have to work at it. I want to have good health. Okay, go join a gym. I'll help you, but the universe, but you know what I mean? You got to put some footwork on it.
Oh,
so
yes.
I wasn't begging, and I wasn't other aided. It wasn't out there. Something out there is going to reward me. I'm part of whatever it is out there. On my new book, Enlightenment, it has right here, it's a quote from Thich Nhat Hanh. Enlightenment is when a wave realizes it's part of the ocean. There's no separation.
Everything's connected. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what quantum physics tells us. But bad theology tells us that God is out there and I'm a miserable sinner over here. Nobody rises to low expectations like that.
I agree 100%. I'll tell you a little anecdote in a second, which is similar to what you mentioned. But I also think that theology, or our understanding of it, we've been told down the years, you pray to God, you will get stuff. Isn't it? It's almost that simple. You pray to God, you will get stuff, right? Which I don't mean physical stuff, but you know what I mean. You'll get what you deserve. I think that's almost wrong. And I like the word gratitude that you said. And here comes my anecdote, right? For the last, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks, I've been doing this myself, affirming in my mind. I haven't been sending out a prayer, so to speak, but I have been sending out, I'm thankful for this. And I'll give you an example. I threw out, I'm thankful that you accepted to appear on my show, right? And it's not, what can I get next? It's, I am thankful that you are appearing. And I'm starting to be nudged in that direction now. And I like that, because I have been quite selfish in my life, not really horribly so, but just, I know some selfish thoughts are there. And I like to switch that mindset. So I think Probably your book title and what you've just explained has moved my dial a bit. So thank you for that.
Well, first of all, you're very welcome, and we all have selfish. That's what it means to be human. But it's like the 12 steps. It's progress, not perfection. That you're looking for progress, not to be perfect. I forget who it was. Was it Francis of Assisi? I forget who it was. But anyway, no, was it Aquinas? It said that if the only prayer you ever said was thank you, that would be enough. So it doesn't have to be a prayer, source if you're eloquent or whatever, but that's a prayer. It doesn't have to be in a formula. It's just that I take the time to be still. I take the time to take a couple deep breaths and let things die down, and I can feel that oneness. But I have to make the time for that. That's what I'm talking about. It doesn't have to be a prayer in the sense of I'm dear or whatever, da 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 da, amen. Doesn't have to be that. You can just do that and just say, I'm just so thankful for this day and the friends or the health, whatever it is. You don't have to say anything. You could just sit down and meditate. And you don't have to you could just clear your consciousness. But because it's an energy. It's not so much the words, it's the intent behind the words.
And that is it. That's the key, isn't it? Intent. That's what a key thing that comes up across my conversations with people is that almost what you throw out into the universe, that intention, is what gets reflected back onto you in a kindness way. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's quantum physics. That's what our ancestors meant when they said, you reap what you sow.
Yes.
That's what the ancestors meant when, what you put out, what goes around comes around. That's what they meant. What you put out comes back. End of story. And if you put out hate or jealousy or anxiety or what have you, that's what's going to come back to you. And if you put out gratitude, tenderness, love, that comes back to you.
Here's one, right? Do you think, like when people are scared of something and it's on their mind all the time that they're fearful of, let's just say spiders, it's almost like that constant fear or being present in the mind brings that spider to you.
Yes. That again, that's physics. What you focus on, you create.
Yes.
Why? Because thoughts are things. Thoughts are things. And so what you focus on, I'm in a country now that is going crazy because Donald Trump is maybe the Republican nominee for president. And when I go look at social media, that's all I see. So people who want him to be president, they're good, focus. But people who don't, they're so focused with him that they're kind of helping him. And he's the type of individual that what harms him most is if you don't pay attention to him. And
it's
now
100% that. It is that. I
right,
know it is.
Now newspapers, stuff like, they want people to, but I don't have to give my energy to that. I don't have to keep focusing on that. We still got some time before the election comes. But that's with anything. You focus on what you want. See, people don't get it. You focus on what you want, not what you don't want. And that doesn't mean you keep your head in the sand. But if I keep giving this energy here, I'm going to create the very thing I say I don't want.
Yeah. It's definitely borne out in interactions in my life that have proved that. My dad, as an example, was scared of being alone, right? Never wanted to be alone, constantly mentioned it. He ended up alone.
That's not philosophy. That's physics. I've been in relationships where I'm thinking the person's going to leave. What are they going to do? They're going to leave. I keep focusing on that. And the very thing I don't want them to do, they do, because I drive them to that. You know what I mean? So we're powerful. And that's what that book is about, how powerful the mind is. We are co-creators. We can create. We can't create everything, but we create our lives to it. We have more energy and power than we think we do. But
and that's the thing, isn't it? Yeah, that's the key.
We can create. So you can create the life you want. When I was divorced, I've been married a few times, and I'm ready. And I started when I got divorced. I took 3 years to heal, but I'm the type of person I like to be in a relationship. But once I got it that I deserved a good person, that I really, really did, that person was right there,
And you were ready for it, yeah.
and I was ready because I
Yeah.
deserved it.
Yeah, because you believed it and lived it and breathed it.
Yeah, and
Yeah. No,
a lot of our religions tell you you don't deserve the good. You don't deserve the good in your life. The only reason you got it was because this person did that. And that's not true all the time.
no, it doesn't make
If you
sense,
want
does
to,
it?
yeah, if you want to raise people up, yes, we depend on other people. We stand on other people's shoulders. But if you don't think you deserve good, you will never have it. And if you do get it, you'll never keep it because you don't think you deserve
Yeah. Yes. Is that
it.
are you a fan of Star Wars?
More Star Trek, but yes, I like the old Star Wars when Billy D was in it, and
Yeah. Yeah, the good
Alec
stuff.
Guinness, yeah.
Well, there's a line in that that is so apt, and I always get this wrong, but the line is Princess Leia says to General Tarkin, "The more you tighten your fingers, the more the star systems will slip through your galaxy, yeah, through your
Mhm.
grasp." You know that thing because it's mine. It's not. You don't deserve it. You know,
Yeah,
you get what you get what you are after at the end of the day, or you don't get what you're after. Um, is it our minds that heals us, or is it a connection from our mind to something else that then heals us?
I think it's both. I think it's both. Um, because remember, it's not either or. It's both and. Nothing. When I was in seminary, the interfaith seminary, there was a rabbi, and his motto was never. It was never instead of, always in addition to. And so now, for some people who don't believe in anything outside themselves, they'll say, I did it. I did it. But I know that we're connected to something. It's with people who heal, and they will say, I didn't do anything. You did it. You did it. Jesus talks about your faith has made you whole. You've done this. Do you see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Because you have a hand in it. Put it like that. We talked about it just a few moments ago. If you can walk out of the hospital with almost lung cancer, and you won't stop drinking, you won't stop smoking, you won't stop eating the foods. Now they've fixed you up, and you go back out and you go back to the same lifestyle. You got to put some footwork in there, and you got to be open. You've got to be open. I had a healing from that Palladian person. I thought, the
Oh, you
blonde
said about
guy.
your clot, didn't you? Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I was already doing the stuff to help it heal, right? I was going to the doctor, they were checking my blood, and I was taking the medication and all that. But when this person came and shot that green ray into my stomach, it went away. So it was both of us.
Well, you can't just leave me hanging with that Green Ray story because,
Okay.
can you just,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah. No, yeah. As a matter of fact, it's in a book that a friend of mine wrote. I don't know if you know Preston Dennett,
I do.
but
I
he
spoke
wrote
to
a
him
book.
first. Yeah.
He wrote a book on UFO healing, so he included this story. Um, 2013 was not a great year for me. I was getting, I was leaving my job. My dad had died. Sounds like a blues song, country western song. And I was getting divorced. It
All the
was
good
quite the
stuff
year.
at one time. Yeah.
Oh my God, Paul, it was crazy, man. So anyway, I had, I'm trying to get the ducks in a row. Okay, this is pertinent to the story. I had a lot of friends who fought in Vietnam. I've been obsessed with that war. I'm kind of like an amateur scholar on it. But when I was in New York, I met a lot of people who fought in that war, even went down to the memorial. And they would tell me stories. They would tell me stories about um, going on patrol and being dead tired, and, sleeping in a foxhole filled with mud, and because of rain and incoming artillery. And I was like, I don't know if I could have done that, man. So anyway, July 4th, 2013, where I live, um, it was that day was pouring down rain, torrential. I don't like fireworks. To be a good father with my ex, they love fireworks, and my daughter. So I would go. It was such a hassle. You get there, you had to get there at 7 for they didn't start till 9:30. They only did a half hour, and you're sitting so close to people, you know, it's like, and so, but I did it to be a good dad, but I hated it. And then you know, so a 3-hour thing for a half hour, I just didn't want to do it. So when it rained that day and that night, I was so happy. The other thing was, it was thunder. And I swear to you, that thunder sounded like artillery fire to me. I mean, it sounded like I was in a war zone. And it was 9:50 Eastern time. That's important because after this being came, I tried to call Preston, who was living in LA, which made it 10 minutes to 7. He didn't pick up. He was out, obviously. So anyway, again, I'm in my bed, and I feel this presence in the room. When I turn around, this brother's there. Now he had a cowl on, started to call it a hoodie, and he had bangs, but he was pale like this with blue eyes. He had the muscles. You could see the muscles coming through the cowl, the robe. It was a rope belt. You could see his biceps, his chest, and tricep. He was ripped. And he was almost as tall as my ceiling. And I sat up like this, and my heart is, and he holds his hand out, his right hand, and an apple green light comes out and it hits me in my stomach. I didn't feel it, but I saw it. He, like his molecules just dissolved. Like he was just not there anymore. Like I'm awake now. I wasn't asleep. I called Preston because I looked down at my leg, and my right leg, I had a blood clot from the ankle to the groin area. I mean, I'm thin. My right leg was like LeBron James. I wish my legs were that big.
But it swelled up at least double the size or something, had it?
Yes, because it was gone. I called Preston. He wasn't there. I called my ex and my daughter, and they know about my experiences. And when I went there, I showed them my leg, and they both did this at the same time. It was like it was choreographed. They both went, They healed you. I had to go to the doctor. I'm going every week, 10 days. They stick my finger, check the blood, and they're giving me something called Wayfarin, and called Coumadin, the blood thinner. And I was injecting myself with something called a Nexaparin, a blood thinner. They said, what happened here? And I'm not going to tell them the truth because I don't want to be medicated or confined. So I just said, the medicine worked. It doesn't work that fast, Mr. Carter. No. You were just here 10 days ago and we stuck you. No, what can you explain this? And we kept going back and forth. And then finally I said, I don't know what happened. You don't know what happened. Can't we just leave it at that? But aren't you happy for me? This is a healing. I'm healed. And they backed off. They said, well, of course, we're happy, and I didn't want to disrespect them. I just couldn't tell them the truth, but they accepted it. They took me off of that blood thinner, and my leg was healed. And Preston put the story in his book.
Amazing. There's going to be loads. I know there is because I saw Preston did a web series on it, didn't he? When he had 10 best cases or whatever based on that. Yes. But from a doctor's perspective, they must know there's weird stuff going on because they're seeing these miraculous healings a lot. It'd be interesting to speak to somebody of them and see what stories they hear all the time and how prevalent it is. Do you know what I mean? Because I imagine it happens quite a lot.
Yeah. But again, it's like a minister. You can't come out and say, I know UFOs exist. I can't, because you'll lose your job. you'll lose your job. If you're tenured somewhere, if you're a scholar, you'll lose it. And with doctors, they can't come out and say that. Some can, some say, but they can't. They can just say, I don't know, or this is truly a miracle. But they're not going to tell their colleagues. Reverend Carter came in and told me that a blonde, blue-eyed man that he thought was from the Pleiades or Nordic-looking man came in, shot him with a green ray, and it's like that. Even I'm saying it, and it'd be like, wow. Are you okay? Should you get to a hospital? Are you feeling okay? That's the thing.
Yeah, there is that sort of like science versus happenings, or spiritual, whatever it is going on, isn't it? That they can't reconcile, people who are trapped on the science side of things.
Yeah, well, they can't reconcile that you can be science and have these spiritual things. They're not separate.
Yes. No, they're not. It's a balance to everything. You can be in the middle.
They don't get it. They don't get that.
No, and I like to live my life in the middle. And I describe myself as a 50-50 person. Other people, I would have told them that. And I think if you sit right at the balance of everything, your life is just so much better. So,
well, that's the Buddhist way. The Buddhists talk about the middle way. The middle way.
I didn't know that.
Oh, yes. Cool. You take the middle path. This balance. If you look at the Lao Tzu, you look at the Taoist circle, there's a little dark in the light and a little light in the dark, right? The circle. Yeah. That's where that comes from. That's the middle way. That's the Chinese way of saying it. It's a balance. Life is balance. And you're constantly trying to keep that balance.
Definitely.
I hear people talk about things that they say has happened to them. And I'm not going to say that didn't happen to you, but I don't swallow the story whole all the time. When you're in a field like this, a lot of people want to be part of the club. A lot of people say, well, how come they don't come see me? How come they don't come see me? As if, I say, be careful what you ask for. I told a few people at my church, they know about it. All of a sudden, oh, well, when I talk about the Bible, and I get it. Oh, I've always thought that. Okay, but if I hadn't said anything, they would have never said it. I get that, but now I know people all of a sudden, I saw something too. It's like I want to be part of this cool thing. Do you know what I mean? And so it's not cool. It's something that is, but it's always I want to be a part. That means I'm special. That means somehow, and it's just something that has happened. I do not think I am more special or less special than anybody. But if people want to be part of something, and they'll tell a story.
Those things, though, right? True. When people say, "Oh, I want to be part of it," how do we know that they haven't already? They just don't remember.
Well, yeah, but it's also like somehow spirituality is not something you wear. It's something you do, something you live. So, I saw a UFO, so I'm a spiritual person. That's not necessarily true.
Yeah, they're not seeing it like that, are they? They're just seeing it as I saw a metallic thing.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Or even if they've seen, it's somehow I want to be special. And that's not always the way it is. I mean, I wouldn't, I don't know why someone said to me, one woman was angry at a conference. And I just said, it's not a competition. And be careful what you ask for. Because I had to go through therapy. I wasn't sleeping at nights. I was missing a lot of sleep. I was jittery. I mean, and then they kept coming, it took me a while. I mean, I still have stress. Post-traumatic stress. It's hard for me. My wife was away for the weekend for work, and my daughter was here this weekend. But when I'm home alone, it's hard for me to be alone here, especially at night, because they know they could just pop up. And that's what gets me. Not that they have to knock on my door, but if I'm in bed or if I'm talking or if I'm just here and I turn there and there's this person right here, that's a heart stopper.
Yeah, I would not like to live like that. So yeah, I get the sentiment.
Yeah.
Are you always on edge then? Are you always on edge?
I'm more not as much now, but yeah, at night, especially at night. I used to not go to sleep until the last minute. I turned the light off, as if the light would keep them from coming. But for me, it gave me some type of comfort, you
Mm.
know. But yeah, yeah. And I'll probably always have that to a greater or lesser degree, but it's mostly from that. I get up and I'm at the gym at 5:30 most mornings because I swim, you know. That's my exercise of choice. But I always wake up around 4, you know. If I sleep till 5, I'm sleeping in. But I noticed that because my visitations always came between 1 and 4. And I find myself getting up at the same time that I have my visitations. And there have
Mm.
been years in between. I didn't have I haven't had a physical visit since 2019 when this person came. But, you know, sometimes I'll have dreams or what have you. But, you know, it's been a while and I still have that, anxiety sometimes.
Yeah, an anticipation of it.
Yeah.
Here's a strange one. I know you may have been asked this before, but do they have names for themselves?
Yes, that I have read. Yes. Yes, and or people have asked them names. Sometimes the literature will say it's not important what my name is. Um, if you look in the Bible, when Moses is asking, it's Aya, Asher, Aya, I am who I am. That's not really a name, but yeah.
Mm.
And I've never, I mean, I've gotten a name from two, but I keep that to myself.
Okay.
And that name I didn't know. My psychic friend said, um, "These are the names. These two people. Uh, these are the two people who had visited you,"
So
and
it's
they
the
gave
names of
names.
them as individuals, not the name of
Yes,
their species, so to
yes,
speak.
right, right, right. And
Wow.
they may just give you a name just to keep you from just
To shut
okay,
you
just
up. Yeah.
yeah, just
Yeah.
tell them something. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But yeah,
I've always wondered what, and I've asked a number of people this, what the aliens call themselves. Like we call ourselves humans. We are humans, yeah? I wonder what the Greys call them. They're not going to call themselves the Greys. I
yeah,
wonder
yeah.
what their name is. Have you ever heard of an answer?
No, no. Well, I've heard people, I don't know what they call themselves. I know we
Hmm.
say they're from Zeta Reticuli and what have you. But we give them names, but I don't know what they would call themselves.
Yeah, I'd love to
I
know
mean,
that
and
answer.
there's so many different races, out there.
Hmm.
Uh, I'm sure what they call themselves would be very different from what we call them.
Sure. Um, from your interactions, and I don't know how much conversation or in-depth conversation you've had with each of these beings, but if you have had a lot, how do they deal with your faith, if at all? Is it ever brought up, or is it just not even ever?
No, no, and I want to be clear. No, we never had conversations. The reptilian guy came in, and I knew it was a guy because his voice, he spoke. It wasn't a conversation. He just said, "Don't be afraid," and it was in a male voice, and it was in my head. His mouth did not move. The grave people who came to me, they did not talk to me. They would show me pictures, like they showed me a picture of a past life when I was a monk in the Catholic Church. They showed me uh, not an incident. They showed me an event that I was speaking at a church. I was speaking. There was people out there, and then about 15, 20 years later, it was the same church. That kind of thing. But no, we don't have any conversations about that.
That bit where they showed you the future at that event, when
Mhm.
you reached that event moment, did you go, ah, there it is?
I did.
And was
I
it like
did.
a deja vu moment, or was it
This is
separate from
what
that?
this is what it was. Um, it wasn't deja vu. I was speaking about Dr. King, and I was quoting one of his speeches, which I hadn't done before. But I was in a church. I had a three-piece suit on. My hair, I didn't have dreadlocks. I have my hair braided now. I had like, a military kind of haircut. And yeah, I had kind of forgotten about it. And then when it happened, I was like, oh my goodness, this is what they were talking about. This is what they showed me. Um, my friend Gene told me, this was in the 90s. He said, I see you speaking at a church. There's a stained glass window behind you, and the word Presbyterian comes up. He says, and your message is being well received. He said there was a lot of people there. And he said, and this is a church that they have guest speakers come in from different denominations and religions. That was in like 1998. About 2010, 2011, a Presbyterian church down the street from my church said, we want to have some people in our area to come and tell us about what they believe. And I came, and then they asked me to preach for Lent. And when I got up in the pulpit, it came to me, it was a Presbyterian church. He didn't say it was going to be on Lent, but right behind me was this huge stained glass window, and it was a program where we want different ministers or imams or whatever to come and speak. And he saw that 15 years before it happened.
A skill that is shared then amongst like alien beings, essentially, isn't it? This sort of like foresight, whatever.
Yeah. Now, my friend Gene, as far as I know, he did not see any alien beings, but he was a very gifted psychic, and he did not know he had this. He took a class on psychic development, and he just hit the ground running. But he's the one who told me. They told the Dr. King thing, yeah, they showed me, but he was the one who showed me this, who told me that he saw me doing this, and lo and behold, it happened about 10, 15 years later.
So speaking of skills then that people don't necessarily know they have, I think you alluded to this earlier when you said you can do Reiki healing, is that right?
Yeah, what had happened was I had no interest in healing at all, but after I started having these visits, it's like all these things opened up to me. I started reading tarot cards, and I always saw people's auras, even from a kid, but I started using it. People started to come to me for this stuff. What they did was, I was in Boston, the space people, I was in Boston at an anti-racism seminar. And I remember I was asleep that night, but I had started taking classes, Reiki classes. I've been doing Reiki teaching it since 1999. I was in my room, I was paralyzed, and that being who looked like that, in my mind's eye, I was frozen, I couldn't move. There was a being, and he was pointing like this, profile, as if to say, don't look at me, look at what I'm pointing at. And there was a pair of hands in prayer. In between the hands was a red lightning bolt. And I interpreted that as healing energy, prayer energy. And he was encouraging me to do that. And so, and then it just disappeared, and I could move. And that was affirming to me, because I was already moving in that direction. It was, and I have it on my business card. I remember I got some business cards made, and there's a picture of someone laying hands on a body, but next to it, their hands like this in prayer, and there's a lightning bolt in between.
So do you think that these beings gave you that skill, or were you learning it anyway and they nudged you in the direction to say, yeah, that's right?
Yeah, I think that was it. I will tell you, they didn't give me the skill, because you can learn Reiki. Reiki's a science. Some people have it, a laying on of hands. I'm sure that's part of it. And some people have it naturally. They didn't have to go. But I think, I know that they changed the energy, because I did have someone who was a healer come to me. She walked with a cane, and she came to me for 3 sessions, and she didn't need the cane anymore. But, this woman was in her 70s, and she said to me, I know you're telling me that this is Reiki, but she said, first of all, I'm older than you, young man. and you're not pulling anything over my eyes. She said, but this energy is different, and it's from those friends of yours. It's from those friends up there, isn't it? And yeah, so it's different from Reiki. I call it Reiki because I did take Reiki classes, and I don't want to get into it. I would go in a hospital and I would lay my hand on someone or pray with them, and it would help them. And they would say, oh my God, it's the Holy Spirit. Oh my God, it's there. I don't have time to say, oh no, it's really Reiki, and Reiki's a healing
Yeah, yeah.
modality. I just, whatever you want it, it's what it is, but it's helping you.
Yeah, I mean, see, I'm interested in this whole idea that visitations, be of whatever magnitude, give people newfound skills, or at least open the doors to the skill they already had in them.
Oh yeah, yeah, it's amazing. I mean, you've had people who've fallen down and hit their head really hard, and all of a sudden now they have, it's like it triggered something.
Hmm.
That's always fascinating.
It is
Always,
fascinating.
I'm always fascinated with
Have you
that.
got any
I
other
mean,
skills that you think might have been given to you, i.e., are you now psychic?
no, I'm not, well, I'm pretty intuitive. I mean, people come to me for readings and stuff, or I also have always seen auras. Now, I don't know if that's a gift from another life or what have you, but I've always, since I can remember, I've always been able to see colors around human beings. People who are darker skinned, or if I'm on the beach, if I stare at them, I can actually see the skeletal system. At one time, I had toyed with being a medical intuitive, but
Hmm.
those are something that I have. I know that the more I meditate, the sharper those skills become, the psychic skills.
You're connecting
Uh, uh,
more, aren't you? Yeah.
yeah, the more I meditate, the more I'm quiet, the sharper those skills become, because you're calm. And when a healthy body is a calm body. A healthy mind is a calm mind. Once you get agitated and excited, it's not the best way to be in the world.
Cool. Now I'm going to ask you a question that is not meant to put you on the spot or anything like that, but can you see auras digitally? And I'm not asking you to read me, but is it something that can be done? Or is it if you've got to
Oh
be in
yeah,
presence of
yeah,
somebody?
yeah. I've seen people's auras. I see a lot around your head right now. There's a lot of yellow. Yellow is mental acuity. You really do. You're very intelligent, and you really do put great stock in the life of the mind. You're curious. Yeah,
Hell
yeah,
yeah.
and I see that right around your head right now. Now that just went away because your thought changed. There's a little apple. There's a little, yeah, you changed your thought, right?
Yeah,
There's a little
probably.
apple, yeah, there's a little apple green, which is healing. It's also a heart chakra color. I see that. Um, there's a little blue, deep blue, like a lapis blue. That's your throat. This is the lapis blue is the color of your throat chakra, and you use your throat a lot because you're talking. You're a communicator. Those
And a
are the three
singer.
main. Okay, so those are the three main. Um, so I would say that you might want to get yourself a piece of lapis lazuli to wear, because that's for this chakra. That's for your throat chakra.
I will look up
Um,
that up because I've never heard of it before.
yeah, it's called, well, the Egyptians used it a lot. Lapis, Lapis, lazuli, Luzuli,
I'll look
lapis
that up.
lazuli. It's a stone for speakers, for people who talk a lot. Yeah,
Okay, I will definitely look into that.
yeah,
I'm going to have one question before entering the Koit zone. Have you got another 10 minutes you can spare?
yes.
Excellent, thank you for that. It's a question I now ask everyone, which is what strange things have happened to you? Now, obviously, try to avoid the
Oh
alien
my
topic
God,
because we've discussed that. Yeah.
after
Well,
everything I've told you,
I know. What else have you got?
I'll tell you something that was strange.
Hmm.
About 3 years ago, my daughter, I was living in an apartment, and my daughter's room was next to mine. And I got up, and she knows about my experiences. When she got up that morning, I can't remember whether it's for school or was it a weekend. And she said to me, why did you leave me home alone last night? And I said, I don't know what you're talking about, babe. I would never leave you here. She said, you weren't here. She said, I went in your room because I had to go to the bathroom. My bathroom, she could walk by my room, my door. She said there was a full moon light. It was like a full moon shining on your bed. She said, I got up and I walked in the dining room and living room. There was a bright light in the room, like it was coming from the moon. She said, but you weren't there. I don't remember that happening, but I do remember this. There was not a full moon that night.
Okay.
And she said, were you with your friends? I said, maybe, baby, but I don't remember that. But I know I would never leave you here in the middle of the night. I said, what time was this? She said, about 2:45 in the morning. I thought that was odd.
Very odd. Now that's right in your window of your experiences. So it could be that, or it could be that she had an outer body or something. I don't know.
We don't know.
I don't know. I like it though. It's a good story. It
Yeah.
opens more questions, and I love questions.
Yes.
Michael, we are now entering the Koit zone. Koit zone! Now, in the Koit zone, I just ask you irreverent, inane questions. They're just about you and me and our personalities. So answer best you can, and we can move through them quite fast if you want, or you can spend time on them should you wish.
Okay.
First question. What foods do you really dislike?
Oatmeal,
Oatmeal, eh?
cream of wheat. The texture I don't like. Yeah, those I don't want to. Those first two to come to mind. I just don't like. It's a texture thing. But oatmeal I don't like. Cream of wheat I don't like. That kind of stuff. Ugh, it makes me. Oh,
Cool.
yeah.
Well, thank you for answering. When's the last time you were sick?
About a year and a half, 2 years ago, COVID finally caught up with me.
Ah, got you in the end, did it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it had me once. It made me go all dizzy for ages. That was a weird outcome, but hey,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I got through it. In 3 days, I was back. 3, 4 days, I was back to normal. But yeah,
Good on you.
Other than that, it could be years.
Yeah.
I very rarely get sick.
Yeah, me either, to be fair. Have you got a favorite finger or toe? No,
No,
no, that's a random
no,
question.
that is weird. But yeah, I don't.
Okay. Do you have a party trick?
Yes, I could probably drink a lot of alcohol.
Is that just your special skill, is it?
Yeah, that's my skill. Yeah, I could consume. No, but I don't. No, I don't. I don't really. Do I have a party trick? That's a great question. I don't think I do. I don't know. I don't. I don't.
Fair enough.
I'm pretty boring.
I
I'm
don't
pretty
have one
boring.
either. I just don't feel the need to do something to impress people, but
Yeah,
fair
yeah,
play.
yeah.
Here's something I always like to ask people, well, as often as I can, and I say pick something in the background that we can see now, and tell us the story of it. So something in your background over there.
I'm an Egyptian freak, and I'm sure I've had several past lives there. And this picture, I don't know if you can see it, of
Mm-hmm.
Tut.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I was walking down the street with a friend of mine who was very, very wealthy, and she was a spiritual seeker, and she lived in a high rise on 57th Street in New York, and we had become friendly. And we were walking down the street, and um, we walked by this store, and that was in the window. She said, "Isn't that beautiful?" And I said, "Ooh, that's really impressive." She said, "Well, I want to go in." And we went in, and she bought it. And when the guy wrapped it, and she said, "That's for him."
That's very nice.
That was
Fair
very
play.
nice. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
What a lovely
That was very.
story. Hey, there's something grey, a little statuette on that black bookcase there. Is that a picture of a girl? Is that a maquette of a gelfling?
You're talking about over here?
Yeah, the grey thing, the little grey head statuette thing.
It's actually, let me bring it. I think you're talking about this.
Yes.
Yes, this is actually a
Oh, it's
Nordic,
yeah.
the Nordic being. There's a woman, a friend of mine, and it glows in the dark. There's a woman who's an experiencer, and she's an artist, and she lives in Nevada. and her name is Carol McLeod. And every being that I've met, I tell her, and I describe the being, and she makes a sculpture of it. And so those sculptures I chose, she made those.
That's lovely. Another nice connection. And
Yes.
from here, it looks like a gelfling from that program, The Dark
Oh.
Crystal, if you've ever seen that. That's only from here.
Yeah. That's a Nordic person.
Fair play. What do you normally eat for breakfast?
If I do eat breakfast, it can range from just like Cheerios with flaxseed on it, or something that I could, something healthy.
Yeah, like a bowl of oatmeal.
No, yeah. Oh my God. Or I like a big breakfast on the weekends, scrambled eggs, veggie sausage, either potatoes or home fries or something like that. But that's usually on a weekend. Sometimes waffles, but yeah.
Awesome. What's the best place you've ever been?
Wow, now that is big. I don't have one best place. I was in back in the late '90s. I was in Jerusalem for 10 days. I was in Israel for 10 days.
Yeah.
I was in seeing the Mayan pyramids on the Yucatan. That's up there. Probably those two places. Yeah. Yeah.
Fair play. Fair play. Yeah. I'd like to do the those pyramids myself. It's just, isn't it, money and time and the right opportunity.
Exactly.
Is there an image or sound in your life that when it appears, it tells you to listen, i.e. a messenger of an advanced warning or something?
An image.
Or a sound, yeah.
Probably an image. My altar's over here. I have those little sculptures there. They center me when I have a picture of, I don't think Jesus actually looked like what's over there, but I look into the eyes, and the eyes are weird because it looks like they follow you. But I have some extraterrestrial statues over there, and you know what? I'm rambling. When I meditate, I sit down and I hit the Buddhist gong, and I hit the bells, and they say, time to meditate. Those pictures help me too, center me.
Yeah.
But, so you got the visual and the noise, boom.
Okay. I think you answered this one in a slightly different way than what I envisaged it. So I like the answer, it's right, but what I was getting at was, is there sort of like something you see? Say you're walking down the high street, right, and then you see a lady with a red bag, that's an example. The very fact that you're seeing that lady with a red bag makes you sit up and go, oh, something's about to happen. So is there a portent image or sound in your life? Okay, cool. Just wondering. What podcasts do you listen to?
I don't really, I listen to the ones I'm on. So I don't have a specific one. Like I'm going to listen to yours. And sometimes I do a lot of them. So, and sometimes I don't listen because, I know, but I do so many of them when I love doing them. So part of that answer would be none, but I try and listen to the ones that I'm on.
Excellent stuff. Thank you. When's the last time you climbed a tree?
Probably when I was a teenager.
Many moons ago. Many
Yes.
moons ago. And the final question in the Koit zone before we leave it for the final two questions of the interview. When you leave this world, what would you want to be remembered for?
Just that I was kind to someone.
Yeah, and I kind of knew you were going to say that because that matches what I think of you and everyone else's view of yourself, of you. It's nice that you have that view of yourself. That's awesome.
Yes.
Right, that's the end of the Koit zone. Thank you ever so much for answering those. Final two questions. First off, what else do you like to do in your downtime? Any activities or guilty pleasures?
I like to read. I like to swim. I like to go for walks with my wife. We have a lovely dog we walk with. I like to spend time with my daughter, but mostly relax reading, sitting on the porch. I'm an introvert by nature, believe it or not. So, anything that's either with me or her, but swimming is the big activity, but I love to read and I love to cook. I'm starting to like to cook now.
I think you've hit the nail on the head again with something else there, which is the introvert part. I find to most of the people who are really deep thinkers and people into this sort of topic tend to be introverted because they're not about pushing themselves ego-wise, are they?
I think you're right. I know I was having a conversation just very quickly with a friend of mine, and I don't tell it's kind of an open secret, but everybody I meet, I don't go, oh, you know what? I've seen extraterrestrials. So she met someone at church, and this woman said, well, I channel extraterrestrials. I'm new to the church. And so she said, well, our minister, and, it annoyed me because I don't share that with everybody. So why do you do that? I don't know her. You don't know her. Why not ask me first? Yes, it's an open secret, but and that kind of annoys me because I'm not I'm a private person for the most part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like the fact that introverts are this way. I like it for myself, so I hope you do too.
No, I do. It depends on. I define it like the Myers-Briggs. Now, real quick, because I know we're wrapping up. They say, where do you get your energy? I get my energy by being alone. I can be in front of a crowd for a couple hours, but I need to get away. I need it to replenish.
Yeah.
The extrovert, the more the merrier. The more people, the more. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
that resonates with me, so thank you. Final question. What are you currently working on?
Well, my book Enlightenment just came out in December, so I'm working on promoting that. I'm going to try and have a book signing. There's some projects in the can, some documentary films, but just waiting for the money to come through for those. So hopefully I'll get to do Ancient Aliens and a couple other TV shows later this year.
Excellent stuff. I'm going to let you know of one final thing that I've saved to the end in case it embarrassed you up front. There's something about your voice, right, that has niggled in my brain for a long time. Ever since I've heard you on all your podcasts like Heather Wade and all these other ones, I've liked your voice, not in a weird way, but it's resonated with me. Has anyone else ever said that about your voice?
Yes. People have said to me, I was in the other room cooking and I heard this voice and I walked in and it was you on television. People have always, your voice is soothing. I don't remember it being this way, but I will tell you this. When I was first having my experiences and I was paralyzed, I felt electricity like they were working on my voice. I would hear this bzz, 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 like energy and feel it. And that I remember. Yeah. And I take care of it because I use it like it's your money maker as it were. But I will remind you to get the lapis.
I will definitely look into that 100%. 100% do it after this.
I wear them as well.
Look, Michael, it's been a fantastic conversation. I appreciate you being here and giving your time. You do definitely 100% come across as a lovely, kind man, and I hope that comes across to everyone else that way. And on that basis, if you've liked what you heard from Michael today, check out the links in the description. Yeah, there's links to his books and to his website. Pay him a visit. Go and buy some of his books. Yeah, it helps. Oh, and leave a review. That always helps. So thank you. Michael, thank you ever so much for coming on.
Thank you.
To watch other KoitCast episodes, please click the image top left. To subscribe to my channel, please click the image top right. Please like and share to help KoitCast grow, and most importantly of all, please click the notification bell so you never miss an upload.